I'm Spencer, and this is Ideas That Matter. And today we're going to explore a really interesting topic, which is, do higher incomes actually make people happier? And how do we know? In order to study happiness, we first have to define what we mean by happiness. And this is done in a couple different ways. One measure of happiness is what's known as life satisfaction. And you can figure this out for someone by asking them a question like, on a scale from 0 to 10, overall, how satisfied are you with your life? Or you can use a question like the Cantrell ladder, where you say, imagine a ladder with rungs going from 0 to 10, where 10 is the best possible life for you, and 0 is the worst possible life for you. Which rung of the ladder are you at? And when researchers looked at the relationship between life satisfaction and GDP per capita, which is a measure of how wealthy people are in a country, they found that as GDP per capita goes up, life satisfaction goes up along with it. But that's not a great way of looking at this question, because there are many things that differ between wealthy countries and poorer countries. For example, wealthy countries tend to have better healthcare systems, tend to have better education systems, and so on. So it helps to look within a country as well. If we look within countries, we see a similar effect. As the amount of money people make goes up, their life satisfaction goes up as well. But what is the nature of this relationship? Well, we see it's what's called a logarithmic relationship, which means you have to keep doubling income to get the same increase in life satisfaction. In particular, in the US, every time you double your income, on average, people end up with about half a point more life satisfaction on this 0 to 10 life satisfaction scale. So as people get wealthier, their life satisfaction does tend to increase. But you need more and more money to get the same increase. It makes sense intuitively. If you make an extra $1,000 and your income's only $10,000, then that's a pretty big increase and it should have a big change in your life. Whereas if you make an extra $1,000 and your income's already $100,000, it's going to have a lot less effect. And so it makes sense that we get this logarithmic relationship. Now, that's not the only way to look at happiness. Life satisfaction is kind of an overall evaluation of how well our life is going. But what if we look at the problem from a different angle? What if we ping people throughout the day and say, how good do you feel right now? Do we get the same result? Well, in a famous paper by two Nobel Prize-winning scientists, Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton, they found that well-being, which is this measure of how good you feel in a given moment, doesn't work the same way that life satisfaction does. As incomes increased, they did see increase in well-being, but it completely tapered off. After a certain amount of money, they no longer saw any additional benefit for moment-to-moment well-being. That's not the end of the story, though. A newer paper came out by a researcher named Killingsworth, and it found a really different result. What Killingsworth found is that as income increased, well-being continued to increase, just like with life satisfaction. So what's going on here? Why did he get a different result? Much to his credit, Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman joined forces with Killingsworth to do what's called an adversarial collaboration. This is a really powerful method in science which isn't used enough, where two researchers that disagree work together to try to come to the root of their disagreement and publish a paper together based on it. But when they did that, they discovered that in fact Killingsworth was right. Killingsworth's data was higher quality than Daniel Kahneman's data. And they found that indeed it was true, that as income went up, well-being went up. And it was also a logarithmic relationship. So you have to double the amount of income to get the same fixed increase in well-being. They also found something really interesting about why Kahneman's results didn't get the right answer. And that's that for people at the lowest level of well-being, they did find a cap. So as income went up, those people didn't actually become that much happier past a certain point. And it turns out the way that Kahneman was measuring well-being, it didn't work very well as a general well-being measure. It was more a measure of how bad their well-being was. And so what he accidentally was looking at people that were in the low well-being category, where an increase of income actually stops having much effect on their well-being. Okay, but that's not the end of the story either. I went and I looked at the data for this recent paper, and I plotted the results. And I was really surprised by what I saw. Because if you read the paper, it would be very easy to come away with the conclusion that, well, both life satisfaction, just how satisfied you are with your life overall, and well-being, which is how good you say you feel at random moments in the day, they both go up with income in this logarithmic way. However, when I plotted the data, I saw this. Do you see the increase in well-being as income goes up? Well, neither did I. Or maybe I could barely see it if I squinted. So what's going on? Well, if you zoom in really far in the data, you can see the logarithmic effect. But what this ignores is that the effect is really, really tiny. There was a very, very small increase in well-being as income went up. And indeed, Kahneman and Killingsworth did mention it in the paper, but it was really not the main result of the paper. The main result was about this logarithmic relationship. It would be very easy reading the paper to miss the fact that this is such a small effect. And so let's compare the size of the effect for how income affects life satisfaction, which remember is how satisfied you are overall with your life, versus how income seems to affect well-being, which is how good you feel when you're pinged at random moments in the day. Well, what we find is that doubling your income might have about a 0.5 point increase in life satisfaction on a 0 to 10 scale. Okay, not too bad. But doubling your income only had about a 0.1 point increase on a 0 to 10 scale on the well-being scale. So if you started at a 5 in life satisfaction, you doubled your income, you might go up to a 5.5. But if you started at a 5 in well-being and you doubled your income, you'd only go up to a 5.1. The 5 to a 5.1, extremely small. So what we learned here is that there does seem to be a logarithmic relationship between both income and life satisfaction and income and well-being. But the strength of the relationship is not the same. Doubling your income increases both of them, but it increases life satisfaction substantially more. Now this leads to a very interesting philosophical problem, which is which of these should you care about more? Should you care more about increasing your life satisfaction or more about increasing your well-being? Almost everyone cares about being happier, but which type of happier do you actually care about? And that is a conundrum that nobody has a definite answer to, because it ultimately depends on your values. How satisfied you are with your life is going to depend on things like, did you achieve the goals that you want to achieve? Do you feel like you're making progress? Do you have strong, loving relationships and good connections to the people you care about? And so on. Whereas moment-to-moment well-being may depend more on things like, do you have chronic pain? Do you feel good on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel a lot of stress? And so on. And there's no right answer to which of these is more important, but different people will care about them different amounts. If you want to dive deeper into this topic, you can check out our report about it on the clearthinking.org website. Hope to see you next time.